Still recovering from the Civil War period, Washington was a horse and buggy town in search of its new identity as a cosmopolitan capital when Christian Huerich arrived here in 1873. He decided this was the place where he would build his dream, a brewery in the grand tradition of his native Germany. Huerich's grandson, Gary.
He didn't allow himself to be distracted by frivolous things, if you will. He knew, he had the basic family values. He wanted a family. He had selected his life's work. He wanted a brewery. And he was not afraid to work and really put the time in necessary to build something successful.
And successful it was. So much so that where the Kennedy Center stands today, Huerich built his second and much larger brewery in 1894. With a capacity of 200,000 barrels a year, it satisfied Washington's thirst for beer halfway through the next century, and into a period when Christian Huerich Jr. took over the business. But in 1956, increasing competition and declining sales forced the brewery to close its doors before a third generation could savor the Huerich heritage. After a 30-year hiatus, grandson Gary Huerich is rebrewing the family tradition.
Not only had I fallen in love with the idea of a family-run brewery, but I had also fallen in love with the concept of the brewing industry itself. There's a lot of romance, a lot of history in brewing that people aren't aware of these days. So having developed this sense of being not able to enter the family business, I guess that made the feeling that much stronger that I wish someday I'd be able to. Finally, about 3 years ago, I started taking note of the microbreweries that started opening around the country. And all of a sudden it occurred to me that, my God, this is perhaps the opportunity I've been waiting for.
Discovering that the evolution of the industry meant you did not have to be big to be successful, Gary spent 2.5 years planning the return of the hometown brew, of Old Huerich Amber Lager, a Bavarian-style beer the way Granddad used to make it.
Well, we started by looking at some brewing records books that I have from my grandfather from about 1910. Got a good feel for the kind of beers that he made before Prohibition, back when, again, beer was meant to be taste a certain way. It was still beer, if you will. And given that, and given some basic guidelines that, one, I was very impressed with Bavarian beers because of their smoothness. Two, that I wanted to avoid the harsh afterbitter that most imported beers seem to have and some of the domestic beers have. And three, using these brewing records books as a guideline, I started to get a better feel for exactly the kind of beer that I wanted to make.
Of course, Gary can only bring back a taste of those good old days when the Huerich family lived in style near DuPont Circle, not only brewing beer for the Washington region, but owning a pretty fair chunk of it, including a farm now occupied by Prince George's Plaza. Today, the Columbia Historical Society resides in what was the family home for 60 years.
Well, it seemed that almost anything that my grandfather touched turned to gold in one respect or another. He put his first dollar of profit from his brewing business into Washington real estate, and thus had an opportunity to get the family in on the ground floor of what was to become one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Well, we're in the Blue Parlor now, the Christian Huerich Mansion. This room was used primarily just for formal functions, funerals and weddings, really. And the children were never allowed in here. The drapes were usually drawn or the doors closed. So it actually gave a very imposing nature to it when approached from the outside, from the hallway here. Well, at one point, though, my Aunt Carla did come in and find my father, Christian Jr., lying on his back staring up at the painted ceiling, the beautiful, shall we say, chantilly-clad women on the ceiling.
Nice. Very nice bouquet.
It's been said you could set your watch by Christian Sr.'s schedule. Gary inherited that sense of precision when it comes to making his beer. He doesn't take lightly the task of living up to the family's reputation.
What justifies our existence is the fact that people are looking for the variety and the full flavor and the full body that they haven't had in this country in a long time. The imports certainly provide that variety, but unfortunately the process of actually exporting beer to this country takes so much time that the beer, once it arrives here, is not fresh. By the time the consumer gets it, it can be as old as 3 or 4 months. Beer, unlike wine, does not improve with age. Beer is like food. It should be consumed when it's fresh.
The only thing about this old hometown brew that has changed is it isn't brewed in the old hometown, but in Pittsburgh, by another company that produces it according to Huerich specifications. But like his grandfather, Gary plans to build a brewery right here, if Washington people love the taste of old Huerich as much as he loves making it.
Beer in a lot of ways is my life. I'm spending 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week rather, with this project. I've never worked harder in my life, and I've never been happier in my life.